Alan, let's continue on the football. We're going to talk about it. We talked about it with Greg Jennings a little bit ago about Steve Wilks and the firing today by the 49ers. I know a lot of people looked at this and, obviously they gave up the touchdown, right, to win the game in overtime, so the defense failed, right? But the defense held the Chiefs to a lot of field goals, and Patrick Mahomes didn't have any great numbers really going into it. Like most of the game, 3/4 of the game, they held him in check. I thought the defense actually played well, and their coach didn't really give them a chance because they didn't run the football in opportune times later in the game and the mix-up about overtime and other things. But I wasn't really in thinking, oh, my God, the defense was god-awful. And I know they didn't play that great in the other two games that they won, right? Against the Lions, you remember that?
Yes.
Gave up 24 points in the first half. But in this game, I think this is 100% scapegoating Steve Wilks, because if you're not going to fire Shanahan, somebody's got to bite the bullet. Somebody's got to take the hit, because here's another Super Bowl you're not winning. You ran Jimmy G out. He couldn't make the throws. That's what they said, Alan, when they lost that Super Bowl. And they get Brock Purdy. Oh, this guy's unbelievable. He's the next Joe Montana. He can't make a third down pass. But the bottom line still, to me, is the way the head coach coached this game, and that's the reason I have them losing. Where are you on Steve Wilks in this whole scenario?
Well, first thing, I don't think it was Shanahan's decision. I think that probably came from John Lynch and the other people in the front office, because I think even Lynch came out and said there were some things he was sort of displeased about in the game on defense. So I believe that was pressure coming from the front office to Shanahan, and who knows, at that point in time, when that happens, it's like, look, you either go down there and you have to do this, or we're going to be discussing you going out the door. But we need, and it's going to be one of these things. We like what you're doing with Purdy. And the thing is, you just lost DeMeco Ryans, who went to Texas to be the Texans head coach the year before. So, here's Wilks in there, and then all of a sudden you don't have that same sort of success. But, I mean, the fact that you got to the Super Bowl has to mean something in some respect. Like you said, I think even Mahomes said yesterday, I saw some comment from him where he goes, yeah, the defense kind of had me stymied there for a little bit.
They did.
They were doing some things that, we had to make some serious adjustments to.
Alan, that's my point. Like, if you're saying, oh, there's some things I didn't like, I get it. The game ended the game ended, depending on how the game ends, it's always going to be somebody's fault, right? Because if it's a touchdown you give up and the other team wins, okay, the defense lets you down. If the kicker misses the kicker is the one, right? It's his fault. If the quarterback throws a pick at the end, it's the quarterback's fault. But in this case, without question, I just think you have to take a look at Kyle Shanahan. I know you're not buying into it. Greg doesn't buy into it. When is it his turn? When do you stop making people scapegoats and look at them? Because if they win, they don't raise Steve Wilks up on their shoulders. You know what they raise up? They raise up Kyle Shanahan.
Oh, exactly.
And don't say that it never happened, because in Chicago, you notice, Alan, and a lot of fans might not. Go check it out. Go watch YouTube.
Yeah.
And when the Bears won the Super Bowl,
Buddy Ryan.
Who did they raise up?
Defense love Buddy.
They raised up both coaches, right? Mike Ditka was raised up by the offense, and Buddy Ryan was raised up by his defense. They had an unbelievable defense that year that they won the Super Bowl, and they recognized Buddy Ryan. Am I right or wrong on that?
Every practice was a competition between the offense and defense. Ditka even said one time he had to go to Buddy and you stop beating up on my offense? These guys got to play on Sunday. You know what, though? Like I said, I don't necessarily think this was totally Shanahan's decision, because head coaches sometimes hate having to get rid of the guys that they brought on board. And right here locally, Lincoln Riley at USC. I mean, for 2 seasons, fans, boosters, and everybody else was saying, dude, you got to get rid of Alex Grinch. Grinch has got to go. And it just took him forever. He put his foot on the ground firmly and says, "Nope, that's my guy." It's not necessarily defense, and it took Caleb Williams basically going into the stands crying with his mom because that was such a bad optic to finally get that guy fired. So I think head coaches sometimes are really reluctant to go fire a guy they brought in.
I get that. I do. But I want to broaden this, okay? When we want to play the blame game, okay? Let's play the blame game. If you got to pick one of these three guys, because you have to, their loss in the Super Bowl, was it on Shanahan? That's 3 Super Bowls for Shanahan now where it gave up leads in the second half. That's 3. Not one. Not an overreaction to one game. 3 times, including a 25-point lead in the second half, okay? Never forget that Super Bowl. I almost kicked in the TV set. Couldn't believe that. Now then they lost a 10-point lead to Mahomes and the Chiefs before. They blamed Jimmy G for that. So you got Kyle Shanahan. Then you got Steve Wilks, right? Gave up the game. They couldn't stop him in regulation. They got the field goal to tie the game. And then they give up the touchdown in overtime to lose the game. But the whole rest of the game, they gave up 1 touchdown after the muff punt at the 16.
Yeah.
That's all they gave up, Allen. That's a stellar performance by defense, but he's the second guy. Do you blame Wilks? And then the last one is Brock Purdy, who, if you can convert some third downs and get first downs and eat more clock and keep the chains moving, maybe they would win as well, and he wasn't able to convert those third downs.
The problem.
So if you had to go ahead.
But the problem with this, though, Wilks has gone even if you do fire Shanahan, because then all the assistants are probably gone when you bring in a new head coach because he wants to bring in his own guys. So if you get rid of the head coach, Wilks is likely going to be a casualty anyway.
Yeah, I get that. But that's not the same as being run out, Allen, because they're blaming you. When they clean house and they bring in a new coaching staff, that's not because you did anything.
Right.
He didn't do anything that warranted being fired. If they had lost the Lions game, Allen, 24 points in the first half?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on board. That was their best defensive effort in the postseason. That's not where you lose. I mean, where you get fired. If you're bringing back Shanahan and saying he could work through some things, right, and tighten some things up, why can't Steve Wilks come back and tighten some things up? They had a Super Bowl winning performance on defense. They gave up 1 touchdown in the game to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
After a fumble, after a muff punt. What? That's your GOAT? They allowed Patrick Mahomes 1 touchdown in regulation in a Super Bowl game? Think about it, Allen. How many times did the Chiefs have to settle for field goals because they couldn't get in the end zone?
Oh, I hear you. I think it's a bad look and a bad move. It's just, I think after one season, and it's like you said, when you listen to the other team say, hey, we were kind of like couldn't get anything done for the longest time. When Mahomes says, we can't get this thing working, and they're playing great on that side of the ball, then that's not that guy's problem. And you brought up the Bears from '85. I want an interesting thing going back to Nick Bosa's comment about we weren't prepared. I remember guys in that '85 Bears teams were saying, you know what, we went to Buddy Ryan and because he said it's too complex what we're doing here, and you need to reduce this playbook and you need to let us just be a little bit more freer to make decisions out there on our own. And that's my point also. To some degree, if you call yourself a good player and you're a great player and you are a defensive cohesive unit and you see what's going on, you should be able to make adjustments out there on your own. You should be able to step forward and go, all right, I got this. I understand what's going on. I understand the game now. And so if I'm like, we're having a hard time containing Mahomes on certain plays, adjust while you're out there.
But here's my thing, Allen. If I would have said to you, the San Francisco 49ers would allow Patrick Mahomes one touchdown in 4 quarters, are you winning the Super Bowl or losing?
Oh, you better be winning it. You better be winning it.
What am I missing? Am I missing something?
Like I said, you better be. But those type of games, though, Rob. And I know you don't like to go back to talk about things that are out of a coach's control. But you almost, when you play against somebody like Mahomes, man, you better almost play mistake-free football. Because if you
they gave him the touchdown, but again, that wasn't the defense. That was special teams.
Right.
I get that. But I'm talking about going into the game. You said they would give Patrick Mahomes the touchdown in regulation off a muff point punt at the 16-yard line. That's his touchdown. You would take that a million times out of a million times.
Without question. And
yet, Steve Wilks is to blame for this. This is garbage, and we're playing the blame game. 877-99 on Fox. So who would you, Alan? I'm pushing you to the back of the room and to the wall. You gotta pick one of these 3 guys. Is it Brock Purdy, who couldn't get the third down when they started throwing the football? That's when the game changed. Is it Kyle Shanahan and his play calling at the end? Or is it Steve Wilks?
I'm not going to go
against... You have to pick one of those 3.
Okay, I'm not going to go against Purdy because you got to, in some respects, you got to say he's the reason that he got you there also. He came back against the Lions. He made plays. He got you there. So I can't get Purdy out of there. Can't do it. Like I said, though, Rob, the easiest scapegoat out of this whole thing is the defensive coordinator, though.
So out of those 3, you're picking Steve Wilks.
If you're Lynch, you're vested in Shanahan.
Why? I just told you Tony Dungy was jettisoned.
I understand.
Why?
That. Because
it's happened before, Alan Lee. We saw Mark Jackson had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. They were winning 50 games with Mark Jackson.
I understand that.
Do you remember in Detroit when they had Rick Carlisle?
Yes.
What did they do? They jettisoned Rick Carlisle, and guess who they brought in? Larry Brown, and guess what happened? They won a championship the next year.
Different organizations look at things in a totally different light. And maybe Lynch has a very good working relationship with Shanahan, and sometimes that's enough. That, the guy listens to you, the guy does what you want him to do, and you have a great working relationship. So unless something totally jumps out at you, you're going to retain him.